I don't want to do that.
Good evening. Welcome to the Haywood County Board of Commissioners meeting for April 20th, 2015. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Our Father, we thank you for this day. Lord, I pray that you'd help us to make good decisions that we make for the public. Father, we pray for our law enforcement, our emergency people, and our military and their families. Just pray for protection for them and you watch over them. Father, we also pray for peace and comfort to the families of Carol Meese, Jan Presley, and Henry Foy. We thank you for their service. We thank you for their example of service, Lord. We just pray that we would serve as well as they did. As we celebrate this time of year, we thank you for the sacrifices of your Son, because we know that one day, through our hope and faith in him, that we'll get to see them again. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Before we get into the regular agenda, I'd like to say a few more things about the three citizens that Kevin mentioned who provided exemplary public service to the citizens of our county. Carol Meese was an alderman in the town of Clyde for 32 years. I don't know if that's a record or not, but it certainly is a long time. He was very active in the Lions Club and in a variety of other service, including the Board of Equalization at the request of the county. Jan Presley was a Maggie Valley alderman from 1998 to 2001, served on the Maggie Valley Fire Department Board, Haywood County Rescue Squad Board, the Board of Realtors for Haywood County, the TDA, and the Board of Equalization and Review. Of course, Henry Foy, who passed last week, was Waynesville mayor for 16 years, a renowned architect. His work is on display throughout the county. Established the Waynesville Historical Society and was a Paul Harris Fellow for the Rotarians of Waynesville. So if we could, let's just take a minute and have a moment of silence in honor of these three citizens. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead with the regular agenda. At this point, I'll open a public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant, Scattered Site Housing. David Teague, our Public Information Officer. Welcome,
Good
David.
evening. As part of the closeout process, I'm coming to report what we accomplished with this round of funding. You're quite familiar with this funding by now. We get it every few years. We get $400,000 to take a look at housing needs in the county. We form a committee at the beginning of the process and take a look at what our best options are with how to allocate that money. We have options for replacing homes for low-income citizens or repairing and remodeling homes. When the committee met back in 2012, we decided this time that we had enough need to actually replace 4 units. So that was what our original intent was. We also developed a contingency list in case we could do something additional for rehabilitation as well. We did end up having one person choose not to participate in the replacement program, so we were able to do a total of 5 units. We replaced 3 homes, one in Fines Creek, one in Lake Logan, one in Canton, and we rehabilitated 2 homes, one in Jonathan Creek and the other in Canton. Of the 5 homes, 4 of the residents of the households were elderly citizens. The 5th housed a disabled child. This has been a partnership with Mountain Projects for as long as I've been with the county. We work with them to, administer the grant. Cheryl Wilkins from Mountain Projects, is with us tonight if you happen to have any questions of her. But this is kind of the last step in closing out this particular grant.
Okay. Is there anyone present who would like to comment regarding the Community Development Block Grant and subject matter presented tonight? Okay. Are there any board members who have questions of David or any comments that you would like to make?
Just appreciate what you've done, David.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. take some programs for granted because they just like clockwork, and this has been one of those. So if there's nothing else regarding this topic, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll move to the public comment session of our agenda. I have one request to speak. That is from Tyler Howell.
Good evening. I appreciate you giving me just a minute of your time. The only thing that I want to comment on after reading the paper last week and speaking briefly to some other people is about the animal control building, or the animal services building. A few years ago I was elected, voted on by you guys, and put on their board of advisors. And was elected their vice chairman of their board of advisors. I have personally dealt with them and see a huge need for a new building, and I think you guys recognize that as well. Obviously, they need some new space. The problem that I have with it is that, according to the paper, the county's willing to purchase another piece of property for $233,500. I have heartache with that simply because the county's got property everywhere right now that's not being used for what plans I think you guys initially had for it, such as the 40, I think it's 44 acres on Jonathan Creek that's going to be designed for ball fields. The problem with that being, we have the ball fields on Allens Creek that, in my profession, I'm around that space a whole lot. It's not used. It's not utilized as much as I think people thought it would be. I believe that Jonathan Creek is going to be the same way. The first answer to that is it's in a floodplain. Well, I've printed off the master plan for the Jonathan Creek site. It's not all in a floodplain, and that property has already been paid for, is being paid for by tax dollars now. I think it would be a perfect place for Jean and her crew to be able to build a big, nice facility on, and us not have to spend another $250,000, especially considering our deputies don't hardly make anything right now. They only got a 1% raise. I think a $250,000 could go a long ways towards our law enforcement, if not giving them a raise, adding more to patrol our 500-something square miles that 5 deputies are having to take care of on any given shift. So my request or my comment would be that the board reconsider $233,500 to go towards other use besides buying another piece of property that we're going to have to pay for.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would care to comment? I would want to clarify the property in Jonathan Creek is actually 22 acres, I believe. Is that not right? 22 acres, not 44. And I know Kevin has looked at the floodplain issue there. Kevin, do you have any?
Jonathan Creek, it's the floodplain covers probably 2/3 of the property from what I remember, or half the property out there. So
It's not 44 available acres. There's significantly less than that. And if you may recall also, that was a joint venture, I believe, with Haywood County and Maggie Valley.
That's correct.
Which would further complicate another use for the property other than that which it was originally intended for. And I know if people look at the property owned by the county throughout the county, it's misleading because there's so much of the property that was obtained through FEMA during the floods of 2004. So you have parcels scattered all over the county that have restrictions. They cannot be built on, and they can be maintained by Haywood County for some public purpose. We tend to lease them out for $1 a year for community gardens, that kind of thing, so that there's some maintenance of them. But certainly most of them are an acre, acre and a half or less, and are not suitable really for anything, and are not allowed to be built on. So it's a little bit misleading when we look at that kind of property. So, is Does any commissioners have any comments or questions?
I just, being on the EDC, the Economic Development Commission, we are in the process of trying to identify other sites throughout the county that could be potential sites for businesses, industry, or whatever. And even though our goal is to, and I've not really talked to the other commissioners about this much, so it's just my thoughts, but the Jonathan Creek property would probably be a potential product development site for EDC. So, if in fact we could not do the recreation or whatever we need. So, therefore, I've been a real proponent of looking at what we had to do to construct this animal shelter. We started out looking at exactly what we had, and unfortunately, everywhere we turned there was some issue that we couldn't get there. Either a large amount of money for development, or issues that would have been legally hard to overcome, could possibly overcome, but and so when you sit down and looked at the monies that were going to be spent, it kind of began to look like we were going to have to look out and purchase a piece of property. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fairly obvious that we attempted to save money by going to the fairgrounds, and that just didn't work out, which is a shame, but it didn't. And we're also actively marketing the other buildings that we are no longer using, and we hope to complete one sale here very soon, and we're marketing the others as well. So, any other comments?
I would just comment that the Jonathan Creek property was purchased by the county and Maggie Valley, and that was a joint partnership for that purpose. And I know when we were looking for property with water and sewer, you're always at the mercy of the towns. And so, the town of Waynesville, several sites we looked at, their zoning would not allow the use of for animal services. And I would say the same would go in the town of Clyde. And so we were able to find a piece of property. It seemed like every piece of property we looked at, there was always somebody's looking over our shoulder that, that there was a restriction. So it really narrowed down our possibilities for that. So it's been a little bit frustrating, but I do believe we have a good site.
Okay, anything else? Okay, then we'll move to constituent concerns. Michael, you have any?
Kind of answered one of them, so that's all.
Okay. Kevin?
All right.
Kirk?
Most of mine dealt with the animal shelter.
Okay. Bill?
I have none.
Okay. Okay, there are no administrative or agency reports, so I will move to adjustment to the agenda. I would like to add 2 closed session attorney-client privilege. That's General Statute 143-318.11A3 as the second item. Okay, we'll move then, does anybody else have anything on the agenda? Okay, we'll move to the consent agenda then. We've had the opportunity to review the April 6, 2015 regular meeting minutes. Are there any changes to those? If not, we'll call on David Francis for refunds, releases, amendments, and discoveries. Welcome, David.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good evening, Commissioners. Hope you all are well this evening. Before you have the releases and refunds for March 2015. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those. There was nothing out of the ordinary or extraordinary to report this month.
All right. Any questions of David?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to our tax collector, Mike Matthews, for the March 2015 tax collection update.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
I think there was a typo on what you originally were sent up. One of the numbers for our current collections this year. We're up about 0.5% from where we were trying to be at, so we're doing well there. The typo was it had last year that we collected more than we did this year. It's actually should be the 2013 should be $34,154,000 at this time. So we're about $350,000 up on that. As far as our delinquent collections, we're still gaining a little bit of ground, but we're still about 250 or so down from where we were this time last year. What we're doing there is, basically we didn't start, we talk about this every time, but we didn't start our forced collections until about mid-February. Since that time, we've got about $329,500 in attachments that are set out right now, and then we've got about almost $80,000 in garnishments, and then Tracy has got about 84 files out, so that should more than take care of that, I believe.
How much you say we were down year
In
to date?
delinquent collections, we're down about 250, it looks like.
250?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're up about 350 in the current collections.
Would it be possible to include in your report the status of the delinquent collections?
Sure.
We used to get those. So
Okay. I think that was supposed to be sent up this time, and I don't know where it got misplaced. When Zandra sent it up to Candace, I don't know what quite happened
Okay.
there.
All right, yeah, if you'd do that, that'd be helpful for
Sure.
us, I think. So, any questions of Michael? Okay, all right.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Julie Davis, our Finance Director, with a reimbursement resolution. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm bringing you another reimbursement resolution. Remember, I brought one last meeting, and I'll probably bring a third one for the next meeting for some of the projects we're getting ready to get financing for. This particular one, it's the same type of resolution. I'll read the title again, if that's okay with everybody. Resolution of the County of Haywood, North Carolina, declaring the intent of the County of Haywood, North Carolina to reimburse itself for capital expenditures incurred in connection with the construction of the Animal Services and Adoption Project from the proceeds of certain obligations to be executed and delivered in calendar year 2015.
Okay. For those watching, this simply means that we're reserving the right to pay ourselves back
Exactly.
from loan proceeds. So, any questions of Julie? Okay. All right. Thank you. The fifth item of the consent agenda is to consider approval of revisions to the Health and Human Services Board of bylaws and operating procedures. Stoney?
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. You have in your packet some minor revisions here and to our bylaws and operating procedures for Health and Human Services. Mainly, they further reflect our consolidated status, clarify some of the term limits for the board, and we've included the general statute language there. It really didn't change things a whole lot, and also reflects a little bit of the accreditation standards that are met by our board, and submit that to you, answer any questions if you have.
Right. I think there were some generic references therein to the board, and we had the Board of County Commissioners as well as the Health and Human Services Board, so that was cleaned up as well. So, any questions or comments on the bylaws?
Has the board approved this?
Yes, last week. Okay, then we'll continue with Stoney for the last item of the consent agenda, which is the consolidated agreement between the Health and Human Services Public Health Services Division and the Division of Public Health from the state.
I've also asked Mr. Rocco to join me on this one in case you guys have some questions, as he's our resident expert on the consolidated agreement. But every year we have this agreement with the Division of Public Health in Raleigh, and it's basically the agreement about what we will provide in terms of public health services and how they will support us, and it also controls a lot of how the funds flow down from them to us. So we submit this to you for your approval this year, and like I said, I also brought Carmen with me, so that if you have some specific questions, it's quite a large document, feel sure that he can answer them.
Carmen, do you have anything you'd like to articulate?
It's pretty much the same as we've had in previous years, and helps us get our funding from state and federal level.
Okay. I've served on that board for several years. Michael served on the old Social Services Board, and Kirk served on the Health Board some years ago. So we all have a pretty good understanding, I think, and this does appear to be consistent with prior years. So are there any questions or observations?
No questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. That concludes our consent agenda. At this point, I would entertain a motion that the consent agenda as presented be approved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Okay. We'll move then to old business. The first item is to request approval of the fees for programming, feasibility study, needs assessment, and basic layout of floor plan design in the amount of $48,750 with Mountain Design for the new Animal Services Facility. We have Dale Burris with us. Dale, welcome.
Thank you. Yes, this is based on the last commissioner meeting where, it was requested to go back and ask Mountain Design to look at the schematic design phase, programming, and start that process. The cost is actually broke down, $10,000 for the needs assessment feasibility study. Master site plan was $20,000, and the schematic floor plan was $18,750 for a total of $48,750. Now, $48,750. Now, this is based on the original contract, which this is the first portion of an AIA B101 contract, which Mr. Killian's looked at and reviewed that contract. So this is just basically a broken out portion of that contract. So that's normally where we'd start out with whenever we start out where we're at with the project.
And you may recall we broke that out because we did not, as of last week, have a site identified or secured. So this first part, which wasn't site dependent,
correct,
was broken out. So any questions or comments regarding?
We're just approving this for the purpose of utilizing this if we find a site.
Right.
So we're not necessarily engaging them to do the work yet.
We'll be engaging Mountain Design to start the feasibility study portion of it and then move forward with a schematic master site plan. But until a site is actually selected, they cannot
Design a building
to fit on that site. So Haywood County would only be paying for whatever in these services that was approved tonight. And then these services would add on to the contract portion of it. I don't have that number directly in front of me right now, but this would add into the original contract amount. So it'd be taken.
Subtracted out of it.
You pay for it either way, but it's subtracted out of the total amount. That is correct.
It's just like the preliminary that you would go into, given a rendering, what it could possibly look like potentially, and then, if in fact we do identify a site, regardless of where it is, it can then be taken in and adjusted around to fit that site.
Yes and no, kind of, because, based on the site, elevations is going to depend on how the building actually looks. I mean, that's where the third part of that with the schematic floor plan showing building elevations falls into it. So you've got separated portions that I worked with Mr. Cunningham at Mountain Design to separate out so that the commissioners could see just exactly where we were at to be able to move forward with any portion of this.
I guess what I'm trying to say is this is just kind of this is a part of a contract with the architect to try to get us and the public something to look at that where we're trying to go with this.
That's
thing.
correct. Yes, sir.
That's where we were headed, and I think this is going to be a preliminary on it, regardless of wherever even if we'd entered the contract for the full amount, this is the first part of it.
Yes, and the first part you actually have to start out with is the feasibility study to find out what you actually need as far as the size of a building goes.
Regardless of whether you've got a site secured or not.
Are we talking about 10,000 that first portion, right? 10,000, and then
Be a total of 48,750.
10 would be part of the 48 if we
Yeah, that
move
is
on.
correct.
Okay.
You know, and I'll give an example. When I was on the school board, we were trying to do some work on, and I can't remember whether you had already left there when we were going to do Building A at Waynesville Middle School. And we went in with the architect, and they give us a rendering and a potential what it would look like and what we could expect. And then we were not able to move on with it. But anyway, we ended up being able to keep all that. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. Yeah.
Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, then would entertain a motion that approval of fees for programming, feasibility study, needs assessment, and basic layout of floor plan design in the amount of $48,750 with Mountain Design for the new animal service facility be approved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. And we have Julie Davis to give us our budget amendment for that contract.
I'm bringing a budget amendment to you for the $48,750. This is going to be from an appropriation of fund balance in the general fund. We may not spend all the money this year, and if we don't, then the fund balance will not be reduced. However, I wanted to budget the entire amount just in case it did get completed by the end of June and we needed to make this payment.
Okay. Any questions of Julie? If not, then would entertain a motion that the budget amendment as presented be approved.
So move.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move then to new business. To consider adoption of a resolution for a formula for funding school local operating activity in the appropriation. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ira.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'll first read the resolution. It's fairly brief, and then go back and explain part of it. The resolution text itself says, resolution, formula for funding school local operating appropriation. Whereas funding of education is a top priority for Haywood County, and whereas the County Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education agree that the best system for funding school local operating expense is on a per pupil allocation, and whereas the County Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education agree that it would be beneficial to examine and modify the existing formula as follows. Haywood County per pupil appropriation increased by the 3-year average percent increase times current fiscal year's 10D ADM plus ABC revenues equals total local operating appropriation from the county. There is an asterisk for the first year only, 2016 fiscal year, adjusted when the fiscal year 2016 10-day ADM is known, which will include charter school students. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners hereby adopts this resolution establishing the formula of funding for school local operating expense for the next 3 years, unless unusual economic conditions dictate otherwise, after which the funding formula will be reviewed. That's the basic text of the formula. A few points that I wanted to go back and make you aware of. And I'll walk through the formula as it says. The first part of the formula is the Haywood County per pupil appropriation increased by the 3-year average percent increase. When you look at the 3-year increase, what we are talking about is the actual amount allocated to the schools for the school year. So we look at 2012-13 year, 2013-14, and 2014-15, and look at the actual allocations. And you would see a percent increase in 2012-2013 of about 2.17%. And the next year, you're going to have 1.59, and the next year, 2.33. This leaves us up 0.0203 for the total percentage increase based on that. So we're actually looking at what was appropriated. In addition, you would look at the 10-day ADM of the current year. Now, this year, that's 7,424. And all of these numbers have been verified with the school system, both what I just told you on the other percent
10
increases.
days this year was 7,424.
24. And so all the numbers have been verified, the percent increases and the 10-day ADM.
Those who may not know, ADM is average daily membership.
Average daily membership, yes.
That's the number of students in school.
That has an asterisk, and it's picked on the 10-day point. Typically, we would look at the present year because the ADM, the average daily membership, has been going down the last few years. And we want to make sure that they were insulated against that so that we did not go in and they set a budget in July, and then in August, 10-day measure, find out that some of that money may go back. In addition, there's another unknown for this year in that there will be a charter school in Haywood County. So that we're wanting to make sure, and this is why the asterisk in that first year, they may have an ADM, the 7,424 figure, based on the present 2014-15 numbers. But then at that ADM point, we'll add in the charter school students for the total Haywood County thing and make sure that that's still a good number for them. So just so you know what you're voting for, and that's the first year only that's going to happen to create the total ADM. There is a possibility that because of the charter schools may attract, and this would be only Haywood County students from the home schools, that the ADM could go up by some unknown increase at this point. Some of those students may go from the public schools to the charter schools, some may come from home schools. So this is making sure that there's sufficient funding for all of the students in Haywood County for whom the county has responsibility. And then the schools would pass that along to the charter schools by agreement in this plan. So looking at the hypothetical allocation for next year, that would be under this formula, prior to knowing that final figure on the ADM, $14,720,279. That's a hypothetical run at what we've got before we know the 10-day ADM impact of the charter schools.
That number compares to what for last year?
That number is up from last year by about, I think, $157,000. So this is you're voting on an increase over last year's budget, but I'd have to go back and run that number again.
I understand. Yep. Kirk and myself, Ira, and Julie met with several school officials, chairman of the board, superintendent, associate superintendent, and others, and came to an understanding about the formula. And it's my understanding that the school board is meeting tonight and will consider adoption as well. Is that?
And my understanding is that, yes, they would urge it. They were happy with this, and the numbers, I mean, the percentage increase numbers they are aware of, and everybody's was in agreement on those.
Right.
I had conversations with the chairman, Chairman Francis, and he very, very pleased that we've got this formula working.
So, Kirk, you have attended the meeting. Have anything you'd like to say?
This seems to be the understanding that we had with them, and they were pleased with it, as far as I could tell, with the group that we met with.
Any other comments or questions?
You know, if we hadn't have gone to the last 3 years, 5 years before, right, we still had the downturn to figure in, so the increase would not be very much. Am I right? I hadn't figured it out.
You are correct. That's
Yes.
why we agreed on 3 years instead of the prior formula would have had a 5-year average, I believe, and that would still, you are correct. We went to 3 years to get rid of the downturn in 2011.
And I like the 10-day, because you're not going to gain or lose many after 10 days.
No.
So that's going to be pretty accurate. Now, tell me about ABC revenues. Are we still getting some?
We hadn't for a few years, and Julie, Ms. Davis and I were talking about this today. and I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact amount because I was covering a lot of figures with the budget today, but we are now getting a small amount. Do you happen to?
No, I don't have the exact amount, but I think so far we've gotten about $6,000. The schools get 50% of what we get for ABC revenues.
I knew the source had dried up, so this must be some left in Raleigh, I guess.
I think what's happening with all these new buildings that are being built, they're being, the capital is being financed by the ABC board. So the money that used to go to schools is now, a lot of it is now in new construction.
Yes.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Julie, but it wasn't ever but about maybe $20,000 or so.
It was about $20,000. It's usually a small amount.
Yeah,
And then last year, we didn't get
large
any.
amount of money. So
It wasn't huge, but, 25 is 25, so.
I was wondering, our county, I think I've heard out of 115 districts, we were 20th on ability to pay. Or
Actual payment.
what we pay for our schools.
Actual dollars.
The actual dollars, we're 20th. Is that still, or are we saying?
From what we could tell, and again, those numbers run year and a half behind, I think, when they run all those comparative numbers that I was looking at. But yes, we were still in roughly the same relative position around the 20 mark, and the ability to pay mark in those things was slightly higher than our ability to pay mark would have
we
uh,
shown.
were actually supporting the schools with more revenue than we would have been expected to.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we were still maintaining those relative positions from the last report.
That's the point I wanted to make. There's only 19 districts are paying more than we are, but 84 are paying less.
Actually, it's 115 districts.
150, 84 minus 20, 20 would be. So 84 districts are paying less than we are. So I feel like we're doing our best to fund our schools.
Well, I think so, and I think the numbers are only going to improve because you have fewer students and a greater appropriation. Therefore, the appropriation per student will increase. Mm-hmm. So,
I'm just amazed. It seemed like at one time we had 9,000 students. Mm-hmm. So the population is still going down, and our former is really helping the system by not,
I think so.
taking the lease number and giving them money. So I'm very pleased. I was on the other side of the fence a long time ago when we had to come up here, over here, and negotiate. And I remember Commissioner saying, "Why are y'all up here begging for money again?" Got lectured for an hour and a half. This is true. So I talked to other leaders in other counties, and they would like to get this funding formula in their county to cut down on fusses. I know Monroe, Union County would, with the big lawsuit they've had where the school board sued the county. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Anything else? Ira? Yeah.
So the big thing is both boards, I assume both boards are in agreement on this, so, that's the most positive.
My understanding is we will find out. My understanding is it's going in front of them tonight. So yes, and they are, and part of it, you were on the other side of the table, and I will say that part of it is the attempt to make sure that they have more certainty. This compared to the old formula, if you wanted to do points of comparison, this gives them more certainty because you can look at a point of budget time today with the ADM as it is in the present year and know and budget on it and not worry about that ADM hurting you, particularly when your membership is declining, to make sure that they're covered for basically 2 years running. So
one of the situations where Mr. Francis was very pleased with was the impact or the uncertainty of these charter school impacts and what it was going to do to them, and we kind of took care of that so they don't, they don't have to worry about that part of it. I think that was a big worry on their part, and that's kind of all over the board right now as to where, how many students is going to be there, or if and when they're going to get open and whatever. So I know that was one of the things that he pointed out in this thing that they were really pleased with.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
I hope we never go back to not having a funding formula where everybody comes up here and battles each other for whatever money. So I really believe the school system would lose out if we got in that arena
I think it'd be
of
counterproductive.
battling each other.
For those watching, one point of edification, the population of the charter school will come from either those being homeschooled or from those attending public schools in Haywood County now, or from those attending public schools in surrounding areas. So if someone comes from Buncombe County, for example, or Jackson, to the charter school in Haywood County, that county would be responsible for reimbursing Haywood County for that per pupil expenditure. So that's what would happen if people from outside the county come in. Now, if somebody from outside the state comes in, it's just like a new student moving here. Wouldn't have any way of recapturing any of that cost. So, anything else? Okay, if not, then would entertain a motion that the formula for funding school local operating appropriation as presented be approved.
So move.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, the second item of new business is we've received a request to appoint a commissioner as a member of the Board of Equalization and Review to fill the vacancy for the unexpired term of Jan Presley, who passed. So to ensure that we have enough members to have a quorum when necessary, that's the reason for that request. David, you have anything to add to that?
No, sir. That's exactly right. As part of the resolution that was passed in February that the commissioners appoint for any vacancies there due to the shortness of the incident over the last week with Ms.
Now,
Presley's passing.
of the board members, the most current commissioner in terms of training and service on the Board of Equalization is Bill Upton. I've spoken with Bill, and he would agree to serve. Is there anyone who would disagree with that?
Or anyone that can take my place and volunteer.
We're closing discussion on that. Okay, then I would entertain a motion that Bill Upton be appointed as a commissioner and as a member of the Board of Equalization and Review, which term ends February 2nd, 2016.
That's correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you. The last item of new business is the request approval of Mike Kavakos to the Community Advisory Committee for Long-Term Nursing Home.
Yes.
Ira?
Would respectfully request that Mr. Kavakos be appointed to the Community Advisory Committee. This position was advertised. He was the only one who returned an applicant. His application was endorsed by Region A Southwestern Commission. I believe they did interview him as well, as what I've been advised. And he's been a mentor in nursing networks and career technology, and he is employed by Haywood Regional Medical Center.
Okay. If there's no comments or questions, entertain a motion to make the appointment of Mr. Kavakos to the Community Advisory Committee for Long-Term Nursing Home.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, that concludes the agenda. At this point, I would entertain a motion for the board to go into closed session for consideration of acquisition of real property under General Statute 143-318.11A5, described as a 1.45 acre tract at 30 Mooney Cove Road, Waynesville, North Carolina, PIN number 8616394150, deed book 809, page 777, owned by Bruce Lowe Toy. And the second property acquisition consideration is a 2.67 acre tract at 453 Jones Cove Road, Clyde, North Carolina, PIN number 8626894904, deed book 457, page number 2295, The tract is owned by Clyde Anderson Green and Tony Ray Phillips. And secondly, for the item we added to the agenda, attorney-client privilege under authority of General Statute 143-318.11A3. I would entertain that motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're in closed session. Thank you. We have returned from closed session. We have a couple of items to take care of. First is a contract to purchase on 50 Henson Drive, county-owned property. The due diligence request for the contract to purchase is recommended to be denied. I would entertain that motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Secondly, I would entertain a motion to approve a contract for the purchase of 2.67 acres of real property at 453 Jones Cove Road, Clyde, North Carolina, PIN number 8626894904, deed book 457, page number 2295, from Clyde Anderson Green and Tony Ray Williams for $233,500, contingent on a determination of suitability by the county on or before July 13th, 2015. So I would entertain that motion.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any other business for the board?
So we got a work session coming up.
Yeah. What's that date and time, Ira?
Thursday morning at 8:30.
And
Okay.
breakfast is at 8. That you cook it. Oh, you don't.
Okay.
That means no sausage
Meals
or
on
eggs.
Wheels. Meals on
Meals on.
Okay. If there's no further business, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Thank you.